Did you people hear? The girl who scrubs pots in that corner says she's going to cook the main dish for the Nwosu wedding. Which wedding? Is there a bigger one? The wedding of Miss Amarachi Nwosu. The one every television station in the country is coming to film. Stop joking. Madame Bisola has already flown in a French head chef. Exactly. But this little one believes her village pot of soup can beat French cuisine. Laughter rang through the gleaming stainless steel kitchen. Ijeoma, tell us, what miracle ingredient do you cook with? Solid gold? Truffles? The tears of angels? Just food, the woman in the corner answered softly, without looking up. Did you all hear that? Just food. Another burst of laughter. Listen, my dear, rich people don't eat just food. They eat a brand. They eat a name. If your dish ever makes it onto the Nwosu table, I will quit cooking for good. Don't worry. It won't even make it past the gate. Security will stop that pot at the door. We'll see, Ijeoma said, still bent over her own pot. No. We'll laugh. And then the screen goes dark. Hello, my friend. Come, sit here with me a while. Tonight's story is about a woman the whole world laughed at, simply because she was quiet. But I want you to hold onto one thing throughout this story. People love to mock quiet excellence, right up until the moment they have to rise to their feet and applaud it. Real talent is like the salt in a pot of soup. You cannot see it. But without it, the whole pot is tasteless. And there are people who live as quietly as that salt, until the day the world finally tastes them and realizes they were there all along. If you believe talent deserves to be seen no matter where it comes from, subscribe and turn on the bell, and walk with me to the end of this Cook's Road. Now then, let us begin. Nobody in that kitchen hated Ijeoma because she was rude. They mocked her because she was quiet. She never fought for a turn to speak. She never argued. She never joined the endless race to win the head chef's favor. While everyone else chased the latest European food trends, French white butter sauces, handmade Italian pasta, tiny appetizers arranged on plates the size of serving trays, Ijeoma sat in her corner, quietly simmering broths in a way no one understood. To most people, her food looked too simple. Too rustic. Too village. Too African. Too different. The place where she worked, Maison Bisola, was one of the most luxurious restaurants and catering houses in all of Lagos. Its owner, Madame Bisola, had built her reputation serving the daughters of politicians, celebrities, governors' wives, and billionaires. Everything had to be imported. French butter. Italian olive oil. Spanish saffron. If an ingredient did not come from Europe, Madame Bisola was not interested. Except for one corner of the kitchen. Ijeoma's corner. Hidden inside an old, worn notebook were dozens of hand-copied recipes, the traditional dishes of the land, where she had grown up. Millet porridge cooked with bitter leaf. A bean stew rich with red palm oil. Fish grilled in banana leaves and seasoned so that a single breath of its scent brought a whole childhood afternoon rushing back. Every recipe carried a story. But no one ever looked twice, because no one ever asked. Ijeoma had worked there for nearly 6 years. 6 years without a promotion. 6 years without a single word of recognition. 6 years hearing the same sentence, over and over. The girl has skill. But she isn't luxury enough. There had been one time, in her second year, when Ijeoma had gathered the courage to propose a single traditional dish for a corporate gala the restaurant was catering. She had stayed up 2 nights refining it, written the idea out neatly, and left it on Madame Bisola's desk. The next morning she found her proposal in the bin, and heard the head chef laughing about it, with the others. She wants to serve village stew to bank directors. Ijeoma said nothing. She simply took the crumpled page from the bin, smoothed it flat, and slipped it back into her notebook. She had learned long ago that arguing with people who laugh at dreams only gives them more reasons to laugh. She preferred to let time answer for her. What nobody knew was that every night, after everyone else had gone home, Ijeoma quietly stayed behind. Not to steal. Not to earn overtime. She stayed only to perfect one dish. The same dish, a little at a time, year after year. She was not cooking it for any customer. She was cooking it because of something a woman had once told her long ago. A good meal should tell a story before the person even has time to say thank you. Ijeoma had never forgotten those words. And she had never forgotten the woman who spoke them. That woman's name was Nena. Many years before, when Ijeoma was a small orphan girl selling roasted groundnuts around the market, it was Mama Nena who called her over. She did not hand the child a coin of charity. She gave her a place to stand in her own little kitchen. In those days, Nena was a market cook, whom everyone in the district knew, not because she was rich, but because she cooked, as if every dish were a gift. She taught Ijeoma how to choose each leaf, how to mind the fire, how to season, with the heart, and not only the tongue. But above all, she taught her a philosophy the girl would carry for the rest of her life. You see, Ije, she would say, while stirring a pot, anyone can fill a belly with anything at all. But to make a person feel loved through a meal, that is the hard thing. Cooking is not mixing spices. Cooking is placing your love into another person's belly and letting it warm them from the inside. To Ijeoma, Mama Nena was not only a teacher. She was the mother she had never had. She remembered one evening in particular. A ragged old man had wandered up to the market stall long after the food had sold out, too ashamed to beg, pretending only to warm his hands by the coals. Ijeoma expected Mama Nena to send him away. Instead, the woman scraped together the last burnt bits from the bottom of the pot, added a fresh egg and a little pepper, and made him a small bowl, as though it were the most important order of her day. When he had gone, the girl asked why she had bothered for someone who could not even pay. Mama Nena wiped her hands and said, Ije, a person who is hungry does not only need food in the belly. They need to be reminded that somebody still sees them. That is the real reason we cook. Ijeoma never forgot it. Years later, in a kitchen full of people who could not see her, she would remember what it felt like to finally be seen by one good woman. But the lives of good people are sometimes cruelly short. Mama Nena fell ill when Ijeoma was only 16. In her final days, she called the girl to her bedside and, with a trembling hand, gave her a carefully folded piece of paper, a handwritten recipe, with a note beneath it. This is the dish I always cooked for my little girl, when she was small, she said. She loved it more than anything in the world. But I am afraid I will not live to see her grow, to cook it for her on the most important day of her life. She gripped Ijeoma's hand. You are the only one I trust to still remember this taste. Promise me, Ije. If one day you find her, on her wedding day, cook her this dish. And give her this paper. So she will know that her mother never truly left her side. Ijeoma promised. And Mama Nena passed away a few days later, at peace, believing her promise would be kept. But there was one thing Ijeoma did not know. She did not know who Nena's daughter was, or where she lived, or what her real name was. Nena had died before she could say. All Ijeoma had was a pet name the woman had once mentioned, a single recipe, and a promise. For nearly 20 years, Ijeoma kept that promise the only way she knew how. She practiced the dish. Every night. Until it was perfect. Until its taste was exactly as she remembered it, from Mama Nena's kitchen. She practiced it, without knowing when she would ever find the person who was meant to eat it, but she practiced anyway, because a promise made to the dead has no expiration date. That was the dish she stayed behind to cook each night, alone, in the darkened kitchen. That was the secret the whole restaurant laughed at, without ever knowing. Across Lagos, preparations for the biggest society wedding of the year were reaching their peak. The bride was Amarachi Nwosu, Amara, for short, the only daughter of Chief Obiora Nwosu, one of the richest real estate magnates in the country. Everything about the ceremony screamed perfection. A 5-star hotel. The finest decorators. Famous musicians. International guests. Nothing ordinary was allowed, especially not the food. 3 separate menus had already been submitted by Maison Bisola, each one a work of European culinary art worth more than most families earn in years. And yet Amara looked at them without smiling. Something was missing. She could not explain it. But deep down, she already knew. Not one of those menus was hers. Try the French menu again, the wedding planner said. It's exquisite. I already did. The foie gras, the duck in orange sauce, all of Lagos would dream of it. I know. But it doesn't feel like me. Every bride says that before the wedding. You'll get used to it. But Amara did not get used to it. She sat alone, before the tasting table, surrounded by the most expensive dishes money could buy, and she had never felt more alone. She was not rejecting beauty. She was rejecting emptiness. Every dish was technically flawless. But not one of them knew who she was. Because there was one thing her father's money could not buy back. Amara had lost her mother when she was only 5 years old. She could barely remember her mother's face. She held only one dim memory, warm and aching, the memory of a taste. Some dish her mother had once cooked for her, a taste she had chased her whole childhood, in every restaurant, from every chef, and never found again. The more she grew up in luxury, the emptier she felt, because the thing she longed for most was not the most expensive thing at all. And now, in less than 2 weeks, she would stand, before hundreds of guests, before the cameras of an entire nation, and before the man she loved. If she could not even recognize herself right now, how would she recognize herself on her wedding day? That night, Chief Obiora found his daughter standing alone on the balcony, staring out at the city lights. He had given her everything, the best schools, the finest gowns, a wedding the whole country would envy. And still, he could see it, the quiet loneliness she had carried, since she was 5 years old. He came and stood beside her. You used to ask me to describe your mother's cooking, he said softly. I could never do it justice. I only remember that when she cooked, this house felt full. Amara did not answer. She only leaned her head against her father's shoulder, and he felt, with a father's helplessness, that all his fortune had never been able to fill the one small space her mother had left behind. Meanwhile, at Maison Bisola, the failed tasting had turned the atmosphere poisonous. Madame Bisola refused to admit it. For the first time in 20 years, she had no answer for a dissatisfied bride. And the pressure, as always, rolled downhill. Staff were shouted at over the smallest mistakes. Everyone grew anxious. Everyone except Ijeoma. She stayed in her corner, quietly stirring a broth that gave off a gentle fragrance, a fragrance that came not from costly ingredients, but from hours of patience no machine could ever replace. One evening, when most of the staff had gone, Madame Bisola stayed behind to review the menu one final time. She was exhausted. As she walked through the silent kitchen, a strange scent stopped her in her tracks. It was nothing like anything on her menu. It stirred something. Something very old. Something warm. She followed the scent to Ijeoma's corner. On the stove sat a small pot, softly simmering. Curious, she lifted a spoonful and tasted it. And she froze. Not because it was elaborate. Not because it was expensive. But because it seemed to tell a story. In that taste there was childhood. There was some wooden kitchen. There was a mother's hand. It made the woman, who had trusted only European food for 20 years, feel a sudden sting behind her eyes, and she could not say why. Footsteps sounded behind her. She spun around. Ijeoma stood in the doorway, holding a basket of vegetables. The two women looked at each other. Neither spoke. Finally, Madame Bisola asked the only question she could think of. "Who made this?" "I did," Ijeoma answered softly. "How long?" "I have been perfecting it for nearly 20 years. Why did you never tell me?" "You never asked." For the first time in the 6 years Ijeoma had worked there, someone important was truly looking at her work. But neither woman noticed that from the half-open door behind them, another pair of eyes was watching. It was Tola, an assistant cook, who had always hungered for Madame Bisola's attention. And the smile slowly spreading across her face was not one of admiration. It was the smile of someone who had just seen the perfect opportunity to destroy another person. For Tola, it was never really about the dish. It was about what the dish threatened. She had spent years doing everything correctly, flattering the right people, copying the right European trends, waiting for the promotion she believed she was owed. And now, in a single evening, a woman she had dismissed as a pot scrubber was about to become the most important cook in the building. If Madame Bisola truly embraced Ijeoma's work, everything would change: the recognition, the respect, the clients. Jealousy has a strange way of disguising itself as logic. Tola told herself she was not protecting her position, she was protecting the restaurant's reputation. By the time she reached home, that night, a plan had already begun to take shape. A cruel one. Madame Bisola did not sleep that night. The next morning she did something she had never done. She asked Ijeoma to prepare a portion of her dish, and she carried it herself to the Nwosu family. "I want the bride to taste your food," she said. "Do you believe in your own cooking?" "Completely," Ijeoma answered. "But you seem afraid." "I am afraid. Hope can hurt more than disappointment." "Then let your food speak for you." But Tola struck first. That very afternoon, Tola secretly called the groom's mother, Evelyn, a woman who valued appearances every bit as much as wealth. "Good afternoon, Ma. I work at Maison Bisola. There is something I think you should know. That dish they mean to serve your daughter-in-law, it was not made by the French chef. It was made by a girl who scrubs pots in the corner. A nobody who cooks nothing but cheap village food from the market. I only thought a respectable family like yours deserved to know the truth." Within an hour, the rumor had reached the Nwosu mansion. Not through the newspapers, not through social media, but through pride. Evelyn was horrified. How could the future daughter-in-law of a great family appear before the nation's elite eating food cooked by some nobody? She immediately demanded an emergency meeting with Madame Bisola, exactly as Tola had planned. "Madame Bisola, tell me this is not true." "Which part?" "The replacement dish. Was it made by an unknown cook?" "Yes." "Have you lost your mind? This wedding will be attended by governors, business leaders, foreign guests. And you want my daughter-in-law served by someone no one has ever heard of?" "I would rather the bride eat the dish that is truly hers than a famous one," Madame Bisola said. "Reputation exists for a reason. But so does talent." Throughout the argument, one man sat unusually silent. It was Chief Obiora, the bride's father. He watched Madame Bisola closely. She was not speaking like a businesswoman trying to save a contract. She was speaking like someone protecting something she genuinely believed in. Then he remembered the sadness in his daughter's eyes, after every tasting. Money had bought every luxury imaginable. Yet it had not bought a single smile for his little girl. Perhaps, just this once, the answer did not lie in an expensive label. Perhaps the answer was honesty. At last he spoke, his voice low and firm. "We will not decide anything until Amara tastes the dish herself." The room fell silent. Even Evelyn stopped arguing. 1 chance. That was all the dish would be given. one single chance to prove itself. The night before, that fateful day, Ijeoma sat quietly beside her pot of broth. She was not praying that people would praise her. She was praying for the unknown bride, who would eat this dish, the young woman she had never even met. And then, when the wedding planner handed her a file about the family, so she could prepare, her eyes stopped on one detail. The bride's full name. The name of the bride's late mother. Nena. Ijeoma's hands began to tremble. She read it again. Then again. The late mother of Amarachi Nwosu, the woman this glittering family mentioned in only a few short lines of a biography, was her mama Nena. The woman from the market. The one who had taken in a girl selling groundnuts. The one who had given her a promise. It turned out that before she became the wife of a magnate, Nena had once been a poor girl cooking in the market. She had married Chief Obiora when he was still a young man with nothing. And even after she entered a world of luxury, she had kept her little kitchen, still cooking for those she loved, until the day she fell ill and passed away, when Amara was far too young to keep the memory. For nearly 20 years, Ijeoma had practiced that dish without knowing who she was practicing it for. Now, at last, she knew. The bride she was about to cook for was the daughter of the woman who had given her everything. And the dish she was about to carry out was the very one a mother, all those years ago, had asked her to cook for her daughter on the most important day of her life. A promise to the dead, after all those years, had finally found its way home. Ijeoma sat alone in the kitchen for a long time, that night, the folded recipe in her hands, and she wept, quietly, the way she did everything. She wept for the girl selling groundnuts, who had been given a home. She wept for the woman, who had died believing her promise would somehow, someday, be kept. And she wept, because she understood, at last, that the 20 years of lonely nights had not been for nothing. Every single time she had practiced that dish in the dark, thinking no one would ever taste it, she had in truth been keeping a mother and a daughter connected across the silence of death. She had simply not known it yet. She wiped her face, folded the paper once more, and prepared to keep the last part of her promise. On the day of the final tasting, Amara walked in, with the weariness of a woman who had tasted too many perfect things, and found none of them her own. Before you judge it, Madame Bisola said, don't ask who made it. Just taste it. They set a simple bowl before her. No elaborate garnish. No artistic foam. Just a humble, steaming dish, breathing out a strange, warm fragrance. Amara lifted the spoon. She took a bite. She raised it to her lips. And her whole world stopped. In that instant, she was no longer a billionaire's daughter. She was no longer the centerpiece of the wedding of the year. She was a 5-year-old child, sitting in a warm kitchen, her legs swinging from a chair, waiting for her mother to blow on a spoonful of soup and feed it to her. The taste she had searched for her entire life, the taste no 5-star restaurant, no famous chef had ever been able to recreate, was now on the tip of her tongue. It was the taste of her mother. Tears spilled out before she even understood why. She set the spoon down, her hands trembling, and she wept, not the weeping of grief, but the weeping of someone who has just found again what she thought she had lost forever. This dish, she choked out. Who made this? How could anyone know how to make this? Madame Bisola gave a quiet signal. And from the back, Ijeoma stepped forward. She spoke no grand words. She simply came close, holding a piece of paper gone yellow, with the years, carefully folded. She placed it in Amara's open palm. Your mother, Ijeoma said softly, her own voice shaking, was named Nena. She took me in, when I was nobody at all. She taught me to cook. And before she died, she asked me to keep this dish, the one you loved most, as a child, so that one day, on your wedding day, I could cook it for you again. She told me to give you this paper. Amara unfolded it with trembling hands. Inside was the recipe, written in the hand of a woman she could barely remember. And beneath the recipe was a note, "My beloved daughter. If you are reading these words, it means you are about to step into a new home. I am sorry I could not be there to cook for you. But remember this, a grand wedding feast lasts only a single day, while a marriage lasts a whole lifetime. When beauty fades, choose kindness. When pride rises, choose forgiveness. People will applaud your wedding, but they will not live your marriage for you. Love each other even when no one is watching. And know that, wherever I am still cooking for you, with all my heart. Your mother." Amara pressed the paper to her chest. No designer label had ever moved her like this. The mother she thought she had lost forever had, it turned out, never truly left. She had waited for her, all those years, inside a taste, and a note kept safe by a stranger's unwavering loyalty. The wedding day arrived. The guests poured in. Luxury cars filled the grounds. Television crews adjusted their cameras. Everyone expected to witness the wedding of the year. None of them knew that the most unforgettable moment would happen not at the vows, but at the banquet table. When Ijeoma's dish was served, a single, humble dish amid a sea of elaborate European courses, people began to murmur. "What is this? Why does it look so plain?" But then, one by one, they tasted it. And the table slowly fell quiet. Because that dish did what all the lavish courses could not, it made people remember home. A childhood kitchen. Someone who had once cooked for them out of love. Then came the sacred moment. Before exchanging her vows, Amara asked to speak. "Before I marry this man," she said, her voice carrying across the silent hall, "there is someone I must thank. Someone no one here knows. Someone most of you would never invite to sit at your table. But today, she stood in my mother's place, the mother I thought I lost long ago, and reminded me what marriage truly means. I cannot leave this altar until I have met the woman who cooked my mother's dish." The whole hall fell dead silent. Hundreds of guests looked around in confusion. Cameras swept across the room searching for the mysterious cook. At the back, among the serving staff, Ijeoma quietly tried to slip outside. She had only come because Madame Bisola insisted. She had never meant to be seen. But before she could reach the door, Chief Obiora's voice rang across the sanctuary. "Please, if the woman who cooked my daughter's dish is here, we would be honored if she would come forward." Every eye turned to the back. Ijeoma stood frozen. Her heart pounded. The very people who, only yesterday, would not have looked at her twice were now waiting for her to take a single step. She lowered her eyes. Then slowly, she began to walk toward the altar. And with every step she took, the whispers in the hall grew louder, not because people recognized her, but because they could not believe this quiet cook was the woman behind the dish that had just changed the whole spirit of the wedding. When Ijeoma reached her, Amara did something no one expected. She lifted the front of her wedding gown, walked down the altar steps, and embraced the cook. The applause did not come at once. For a few seconds, everyone simply watched. Then one elderly woman rose to her feet. Then another. Soon the entire congregation stood. The applause thundered through the hall, not for wealth, not for fame, but for a woman whose work had spoken far louder than her voice ever had in all those years. Many expected Ijeoma to use that moment to expose everyone who had ever mocked her. She did not. When Tola, trembling and pale, sought her out after the ceremony to confess that she was the one who had leaked the rumor to destroy her, Ijeoma only looked at her quietly. "I was jealous," Tola said, her eyes lowered. "I thought if your dish failed, you would fail with it. I mocked you every day." You never answered back. Why? Because hatred only grows when you feed it, Ijeoma answered gently. I chose not to feed it. That confession astonished everyone, not because Tola admitted her guilt, but because Ijeoma refused to humiliate her in return. For some victories become smaller the moment you use them to shame another person. And Madame Bisola came to Ijeoma, and bowed her head. For 6 years I searched all of Europe for talent, while the finest cook was sitting right here in my own kitchen, she said. I confused reputation with excellence. I will never make that mistake again. Forgive me. There is nothing to forgive, Ijeoma answered. There is. And I intend to make it right. Months later, the story of that dish spread across newspapers and social media. People no longer spoke of elaborate European courses. They spoke of patience, of meaning, of a cook who had kept a single promise for nearly 20 years. Maison Bisola changed forever. Every bride who walked in was now asked one question, before choosing a menu: tell us your love story. Because the wedding feast was no longer just food. It had become the first chapter of a marriage. Ijeoma was offered the chance to lead a whole new kitchen, where she trained young people, from villages and cities alike. Her first lesson was never about technique. It was always the same quiet sentence: never cook only with your hands. Cook with your heart. She never moved into a mansion. She never chased fame. And she never forgot the little corner where people once laughed at her dreams. As for Amara, she and Ijeoma became bound together in a way no money could buy, because between them stood a mother, a promise, and a taste that had crossed even death to find its way home. Mama Nena's handwritten recipe, Amara placed in a glass frame, and hung in the kitchen of her new home. Not because it was worth anything in money, but because it reminded her, every single day, that a mother's love never truly disappears, it only waits for the right person, at the right moment, to bring it back. I tell you the story of Ijeoma, the quiet cook, not only so you will enjoy a happy ending. I tell it, because inside it are things I hope you will carry with you. The first lesson: never judge a talent by where it comes from, or by the label it wears. A whole kitchen mocked Ijeoma for 6 years, simply because her food carried no European name. But the thing that touches the human heart has never been the label, it is the truth placed inside. How many precious jewels sit quietly in the corner of a room, waiting for someone patient enough to look closely? Do not be the one who overlooks them. The second lesson: do not stop creating just because you are being overlooked. Ijeoma perfected a single dish for nearly 20 years, without knowing when anyone would ever taste it. She did it not for recognition, but for a promise and a love. Your quiet excellence does not need an audience to have value. Keep doing your good work in the dark, because the world loves to mock quiet excellence, right up until the moment it rises to its feet to applaud it. And the final lesson: keep your promises, even the ones you make to those who are gone. Because some promises, when they are kept, can travel across the years, and even across death, to bring a love thought lost back at the very moment it is needed most. People may look down on you, because you are quiet. But one day, when your work touches a life they cannot ignore, those very people will rise and applaud. This has been Chi Chi Tales. Until the next story, walk in wisdom.